Sudden dip, turn to the left, and downhill. It's like a roller coaster as you head down. And in competition, it's magnificent. There are 4 former Laguna winners in today's field. Teo Fabi, Bobby Rahal, Michael Andretti, and Paul Tracy. Now they come sweeping down the hill. It's a very short lead from the final turn to the green flag as they turn onto the pit state. So they're going to try to assemble as best they can before the corner. And, of course, the starter will be watching them so very carefully. Jacques Villeneuve takes them off the corner. The revs come up. And here we go. The final race of the season is underway. Villeneuve takes him down into the first corner. DeFerrin tucks in very close. Herta works to the outside, as does Fabi. Down through the first corner, it's still Villeneuve. Fabi tries to make a move to the inside. Villeneuve runs all the way to the edge of the course. One car spinning at the back of the field. Not a factor. Gets off safely. Should be able to get back on.
That might have been one of the best starts we've seen. It's Robbie Gordon to continue his disastrous weekend here. Started all the way back in 16th, and look at the build-up on that rear tire. So soft that rubber, it just sucks up the stones and the gravel offline. Apparently nudged there, reporting by Adrian Fernandez. Now to the top of the hill as Villeneuve begins to pull out a bit of an advantage over second place, Brian Herta. And in third place is we're going yellow. They're going to go to a full course yellow. Part of their concern has been throughout the weekend when a car gets off in some of those critical areas, they'll spray so much rock and sand on the track that it's dangerous for everyone behind. So now the front of the field slows down at the end of the first lap. And I began to mention that was one of the best starts we have seen on a road course because they were 2 by 2, absolutely in tandem in a perfect drag race all the way down. So Brian Herta began to challenge Jacques Villeneuve. We can have a look at it in replay as Robbie Gordon makes his way back on slowly. He gets tapped by Fernandez. That's Fernandez off the road.
No, if everything's okay. If you need some tires, check those tires out.
Derek Walker talking with his driver, Robbie Gordon. Another look at this situation that brought out a full course yellow.
He tries to go outside Fernandez. Oh, he gets in trouble. And there's the impact. 2 cars trying to go on the one small piece of ground, and an early time to make an exit, even if you have a badly difficult handling car as Robbie Gordon has had here all weekend.
So Robbie Gordon gets it around and gets it back on the track. We're full course yellow at the conclusion of the first lap. We'll be back.
When traffic congestion changes, the threats to your car's engine change. That's why Quaker State has engineered intelligent oil. Oil that senses the changing threats in your engine and adapts its own molecular structure for continuous protection. So whenever the driving conditions change, so does Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life.
Now get up to $6.60 back by mail when you buy a case of Quaker State, or up to $2.75 back by mail when you buy 5 quarts.
Kid. Being physically active is in my skin. There are days where it's more intense and there are days that it's less intense, but I'm always active. It's not a fad. I don't do it in order to keep in shape for business. I do it because it's part of me. I think in life it's really important to be a player and not a spectator. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's worth it.
ESPN2, people who do.
We've just come back to green flag racing at Laguna Seca. Very quick cleanup. Got the debris off the course. Robbie Gordon got back in line, and his tires and equipment all fine. So now we focus on Brian Herta. The look back to third place, Gil DeFerrin. Teo Fabi is just behind him, and then Mauricio Guzman just ahead. Leading the race is Jacques Villeneuve. That's, of course, the position that he needs if he intends to take home the IndyCar Championship as the youngest ever to take it, and the first from Canada.
And every one of these these drivers knows how they must protect the 4 black boots that contact themselves to the road, because that has been the topical point here, particularly after the warm-up this morning. And the 2 leading cars are the 2 of the best handling cars throughout the morning warm-up this morning. Now moving back to Paul Tracy.
Paul Tracy and Scott Pruitt, 6th and 7th. Let's go on board with Paul Tracy. Jill DeFerrin got around Brian Herta for 2nd place. Now Bobby moves on Herta. Bobby comes to the inside. Apparently something wrong there with Herta's car. We'll keep an eye on board here. Boy, look at the brakes lock up on DeFerrin just ahead.
Brian Herta is in trouble here because 3 places he's lost in less than 2 corners. Jan Beekes, you're down there?
Yes, Derek. When he came by the front straightaway, you could hear that he had a bad misfire with that forward power plant. So it's either electrical. This early in the race, it wouldn't be a broken header, so it must be electrical problems for Brian Herta.
We'll keep an eye on Brian Herta. Too bad that he didn't recognize that during that yellow. He might have been able to pop in and out with a quick change of electronics. Back on board Paul Tracy. Just ahead, 6th place Scott Pruitt.
And just ahead of him is Brian Herta. He is a lame duck. He just went by our commentary booth here, and the engine sounds terrible. In fact, Jan, it does sound like a broken header, very similar to the problem I think Jimmy Vasser had last weekend. There he goes, another pass. He's going to have to make a pit stop. He's got no choice.
Gary Terrell, do you have a further update on Brian?
Just got a quick word with Chip Ganassi, and yes, it relates to the motor. They don't know if it's electronic specifically, not a header. They are going to bring him in. The crew is over the wall awaiting him now. Oh, such disappointment. This team has had so many of these days where they've just been dogged by tough luck, Paul.
Well, he's on the way to you now. Just turned onto the pit road, Gary. There's Brian Herta. Come off. They'll of course reach for the electronics. It's assuming that they don't see anything when they pull the engine cowling. We can listen for the radio too. Parker Johnstone quick off down in the 2nd turn, the hairpin at the end of the long pit straight.
Had terrible trouble this morning in the morning warm-up. Went to the line thinking he's going to have a lot of trouble with boost, and he's obviously stalled the engine here, so this may bring out a yellow flag. I don't know what benefit it will be to Brian Herta, because that engine problem sounded way too difficult to deal with in just a couple of seconds here. But Brian Herta didn't get his nickname High Speed Herta for nothing. It was a winner here in the Indy Lights series.
And they're going to get Parker Johnstone underway without having to go to a full course yellow, so that'll keep the track full green condition. IndyCar safety team does a spectacular job. We talk about all the marvelous volunteers as well, both from the marshals, the flag marshals, and folks from the SCCA, the San Francisco region up here, and the IndyCar volunteers, as there's a large group of those as well. Takes literally thousands to put any IndyCar race on, and you really have to thank them for the marvelous job they've done this year.
And they even work on announcers, as I know, because of what happened to me yesterday morning. So it's thanks to the people down there who put me back in shape. Believe it or not, I ended up on a stretcher yesterday morning, and the people down at the medical center and the Tony Lama Human Performance Center with Don Andrews got the nerve trapped out of the way, and I was back in business.
Al Unser Jr. moving on Jimmy Vasser. Derek Daly apparently spent too much time in an Irish pub in the area. What was, well, never mind. Jan Beekes.
We had a chance to check in Parker Johnstone's pit as he goes by the front straightaway with Doug Peterson. Asked him what happened. He said simply, he just lost it. Spun on his own. Paul?
All right, we continue to watch the move of Al Unser Jr. He is the kind of driver that does move forward very quickly, and that's absolutely the formula he needs today. Started 14th, now running 10th, up 4 positions. What he needs is first place. Michael Andretti working on Ribeiro. There's little Al lining up behind Rahal.
During our qualifying show yesterday, we asked Al Jr. what he lacked, and he simply said speed in qualifying. But now we're in a racing mode, which is totally different. And this Penske chassis, as Jan Beekes alluded to earlier, seems to have tire management down a little bit better than some of the other teams. And Al Jr. has enjoyed that type of race consistency. And of course, he's used it to his benefit to win so many races this year. And now he may be a championship contender, but he's going to need a lot of help, maybe from yellow flags.
Al Unser Jr. His best finish, of course, his wins at Long Beach, Mid-Ohio, and last week at Vancouver. Tied for the most wins among active drivers with Michael. And if he wins today, he'll tie with Jack for the most wins of the season. That could figure into the way the championship is determined, because that's one of the tiebreakers.
And the team will tell you that they were mentally derailed after that disqualification at Portland, but Al Unser Jr. has pulled it all back together to become a contender, whereas this man, really, his season fell apart, Paul.
8th place, Michael Andretti has not been able to convert most laps led and poles into wins this year. He chases Andre Ribeiro right now.
Started 12th. Bad when you start back at the pack. Listen to the throttle. Suffered oversteer all weekend here. Back end sliding way too much. This is turn 5, 80 miles an hour at the apex. Right there. Watch the climb uphill. Gets faster. 115 miles an hour before he gets on the brake. And now it goes even further uphill. 7 stories high. There's a braking zone up here, but he's not close enough. Famous corkscrew roller coaster plunge downhill, trying to catch Ribeiro.
Next passing zone is not this corner, but the one after it.
It's down to the hairpin, slowest corner. Can he get down the inside? Too far behind. Second gear, started all over again.
So Michael Andretti continues to work on Andre Ribeiro, though he has moved up 4 positions himself since the start of this race and currently runs in 8th place. The race is still led by Jack Villeneuve. He stays there. He has a championship.
You never outgrow your need to learn. That's why Jones Intercable offers an exciting variety of informational and educational programming for people of all ages. Cable television is an investment that only gets better with time. Subscribe now for a special installation price of $9.95, and you'll enjoy 49 exciting channels for only $24.43 per month. Call today.
You have to see it to believe it. Automania, Antelope Valley's home of automobilia. What's automobilia? Everything and anything to do with cars. Remember Hot Wheels? Automania's got them. Plus posters, die-casts, T-shirts and hats, NASCAR, Indy, Formula One, everything for racing fans, plus plenty for cruisers. All the cool stuff they love. Test your skill on Automania's computerized slot car track. Open Monday through Saturday. If you're crazy about cars and racing, then you'll be in the winner's circle at Automania. 50th Street West and N and Quartz Hill. Automania.
Alessandro Zampedri has spun in a very precarious position just off of turn 11. And as the rest of the field comes by safely now, they have, though, gone to a full course yellow. So they'll line the field up once again behind the PPG pace car. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Chip Ganassi, this day started with such great promise. This has got to be the most frustrating thing an owner can go through. What's the problem?
Well, again, we have some engine problem. It's really not related to any of my mechanics, and I've just really had enough of this. I mean, all season long we've been fighting these engine gremlins, and once again today it's caught us. You know, last week Vancouver with the other car, Vassar, was the first lap thing. I mean, somebody's got to do some work to get these engines straightened out.
Thank you, Chip. Obviously a very frustrated man here. They hurt his engine. He's hoping to get back out, but he's lost so many laps. Let's go to Jan.
Well, Gary, from a frustrated owner to a very calculated one. Behind me, Roger Penske has been talking to Al Unser Jr., and he's trying to get him to be cautious. Take your time, telling him where he wants him to be on the fuel. They think they're A-OK here, and of course, just like Derek said, this full course yellow will really help them. Paul?
Al Unser Jr. and Roger Penske, two very calculating drivers. And Adrian Fernandez, who had contact up in the corkscrew, has to do a change of nose here. So the full course yellow is working to his advantage. Now, this year, one of the most famous sports personalities joined forces with Chip Ganassi. And earlier today, 3-time